And the hope is to be able to, after 5 series, after 5 sessions, the artist will be able to learn how to develop a web page or a Square shop or even an Etsy shop. Then we will invite these artists to share their link with us, and Las Artistas will post on our website and host a quasi-virtual show. I want to thank all the presenters for their time and their expertise. And I want to thank you all. I hope you enjoy these series, and we hope to see you in all 5 series. And now, without further ado, I will present our first speaker, Jorge Calleja, who will be talking about photography. Jorge, take it away.
All right. Thank you so much, Susana, for inviting me. Thank you to all the attendees for joining us today. It makes me really happy, and I hope I can show you something new, maybe something that you didn't know. So today I'm going to walk you through the steps needed for taking and editing professional photos without necessarily having professional tools. This is important because you may already have the tools needed to take fantastic photos. I'll show you how I've been doing it, mostly low budget with pretty good results. Full disclosure, while I have used film cameras, this seminar will focus on digital photography, given that we're working towards the goal of showcasing your work to sell online. So now I'm going to just share my screen really quick. All right. Can everyone see the screen, I guess? Yeah. So who am I really? I'm a visual artist focused on graphic design and web design. And while I personally do not identify as a photographer, the truth is that taking a photographer role has been critical in many projects and positions that I've held throughout the years. So I have been learning for the better part of 13 years. I'm currently a graphic designer at the University of Texas at El Paso. I have worked on parking permits, college seals, commencement ceremony, alumni, and external relationships. And overall, advancing the university brand. As well, for several years, I took the role of creative director at the Art Avenue magazine, which is a local arts and culture magazine that also had a gallery component. So I was able to work closely with artists from a wide variety of mediums. And of course, for the better part of the decade, I have been involved with Las Artistas as a member, as an organizing, showing artist, marketing director, and I guess today, webinar speaker. So what do you need to take a great photo? Time. Time to prepare yourself, time to prepare your equipment, time to prepare your image. With practice, you'll be able to pull it off and the time will go down. Now, after doing this for many years, pressing the shutter button feels a bit anticlimactic, and you might feel it too after this seminar. And that's because the real work is preparing for the shot. So prepare everything before you take the photo. That way your editing won't take more than 5 minutes. So this is what we're going to cover today. Why are you taking photos? What kind of equipment do you have and what you may need? And also what to do before, during, and after a photo shoot. Now, given the scope of this seminar, you might feel I'm going a little bit too fast, but don't worry. I will make this presentation available for everyone to download. But honestly, this is just a glorified checklist. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We'll have a little bit of time at the end of the presentation to hopefully answer those questions. If we run out of time, just send me an email. You'll reach out to me and I'll be happy to help. All right, so what do you need your photographer, what do you need to photograph your work? Depending on this answer, you might have to adjust your mentality about how to approach the shot. If you're taking it for online sales, you might have to showcase details, have several pictures of your piece. If it's for print, you have to focus on high resolution images. If it's for grants, often the process of making your pieces is what takes the stage. And for social media, model shots or showing your piece in context is important. Regardless of the purpose, you always need to know the specs in advance. So always ask yourself size, resolution, and format. If it's for print, you're talking about inches, 300 ppi, which is pixels per inch. We're talking about TIFFs, EPS, and JPEGs. If you're talking for online, especially if you're gonna upload it to your shop, we're talking about pixels, 72 ppi. Although with phones getting like really nice screens, I feel more comfortable with 90 pixels per inch. And you shouldn't deviate from JPEG or PNGs. Since we're talking about online stores, I should say I would advise that you save your photos at least 1080 by 1080 pixels. This size will look good on most social media images and the shops as well without them being too heavy. So now let's talk about equipment. Again, you do not need professional equipment to take professional photos. Most of it is just ingenuity. So I would advise that you learn how to use your equipment, know its limitations and how to circumvent them. And most of all, be flexible. If something is not working for you, change your strategy, try something else. And also, it doesn't really hurt to be friends with a photographer, you know, wink, wink. So camera versus phone. This is a loaded question, especially now that technology advances at tremendous speeds. Companies are constantly make us feel guilty about not having the latest and the greatest. However, if you have a camera that's 5 to 6 years old, or have a phone, you got your phone like within the last 4 years, chances are you already have a competent camera at your disposal. If you're serious about opening an online shop, a camera or a newer phone is a really good investment. Obviously, you don't have to buy it brand new or the latest model, but something in the range of $400 to $500 is ideal. Shop for a deal. Black Friday is around the corner. If you are debating whether to buy a camera or not, I'll give you some quick maths to kind of convince you. I personally charge between 25 and 40 bucks per image delivered, meaning shooting the image and editing. So a camera viewed as an investment pays itself after 20 images produced. I found my camera about 8 years ago, and it's still kicking butt. However, if you see our little friend here, this image is from a phone. I took it a couple of days ago, unedited, just cropped, natural light. The background is a piece of paper, and you can see this is the actual image that I took, and then just cropped. So what is it? Phones are great. They're within arm's reach. Not to mention, you can also buy lens kits for your phone to enhance their capabilities. Phones auto settings are really good, but obviously a camera lets you fine tune the shot. Again, it's not about which one is better. The key is learning how to use them and recognize what tool is best for the job. Again, if you're serious about taking photographs and building a studio, lighting will be essential. It is critical that you learn how to control the light and how it interacts with your piece. I have 5 of these clamp lamps on my little Revit Studio Kit, so I can use them to illuminate the piece from all angles. I'm actually using them for, what is it right now? The bulbs that I use, there are just CFL, just fluorescent lights. I bought them, years ago for like 10 bucks, and they're still kicking butt. Now, if you're planning on using a phone and a light box, we'll talk about that in a little bit. I would consider LEDs. They're a bit more expensive, but you won't have any issues with rolling shutter on phones. What this means is that photos take images like if there were a scanner, so they go from top to bottom and then just scan whatever's in front of them. So depending on the wattage and the, I think the frequency, you'll get some streaks of color. In terms for stands, I honestly just use anywhere where I can clamp these lamps, chairs, or sometimes I just have people holding the lamps, whatever you can find around. I think it's important to have a power stripe, although I suggest a surge protector. And I like to have a piece of reflective white cloth. This helps diffusing light if you put it on top of the lamp, or if you're having trouble reaching like a tough spot on a piece, you can just use it to reflect light. So, if you put it on top of the lamp, just be careful not to burn anything with it. The one that I have melts, so yeah, just don't burn your house with it. For smaller pieces, you might want to consider a light box. This helps control light, not only by illuminating appropriately, but it also helps keep unwanted light out. What I mean with this is that you should always use the same kind of lights. If you mix bulbs, temperature and wattage again, will show in your image, and that is really hard to edit. If you've ever taken a picture inside a building with fluorescent lights, but you're near a window with daylight, colors start shifting and even the shadows feel a bit different. So that's just, it makes a photo uneditable and editable. So just keep it to one kind of lighting. For a little stage for a light box, you can use the cardboard box. This image on the bottom is actually, my preferred kit, and it's made out of a cardboard box. I've used it for years, although last year I upgraded to a better version, just made out of foam core, but it's the same thing. And, you can just get a box, cut 3 squares, put a little bit tissue paper, and you have a light box. And I'm actually going to share a video with you that just shows you here. Shows you how to create a light box. It literally takes less than 10 minutes to do it. Of course, there's kits that you can buy out there. They start like 30 to 50 bucks, real simple. But I honestly don't like them because they're pretty flimsy and they get dirty really fast. If that happens to my HopeMate one, I can just, use a different kind of tissue paper, or, if I need to destroy the box, then I could just make another one in 10 minutes. Honestly, it doesn't take too much time. If you need more of a studio setting for life-size models, you can also get one of those big rolls of paper for like 12, 15 bucks, either black or white. You just tape it to the wall and let it drape all the way to the floor and have the model standing on top of the paper. There you go. You just have your studio. Accessories. I don't trust my hands, so tripod is essential for me. I got mine passed down from an artist. I got it from an artist. If you don't want to buy one of these, you can very easily borrow for someone. Like honestly, these show up everywhere. If you're a student, chances are that your technology lab or your library will let you check out one for a couple of days. If you have a nice camera, you can look for a remote control to take pictures. This way you can avoid shaking the camera, especially if you're taking long exposure shots. If you don't, don't worry, you can just use a 2-second timer. And that really just does the trick. Miscellaneous, so tape, thumbtacks, cardboard paper, just regular paper, fishing line, towels, scissors, safety pins. All these things come in handy when you're propping and staging your piece. Not to mention if you're working with models, wardrobe malfunctions, just a little piece of tape nobody sees in the shot. Easy peasy. So this is actually my entire setup, if you can believe it. Again, my little tripod, power surge, clamp lamps, forever bulbs, my camera with one extra lens, fishing line, etc. And I keep everything tidy up in a box of produce that I got years ago, and then my foam core light box. So honestly, like you don't have to spend a lot of money, and if you're serious about it, you're just gonna start collecting the things that work for you. And honestly, don't keep things that are just extra, like that just it's not good for you to keep things that don't work out. Anyway, so now we need to think about how the shot is going to look. So going back to the purpose of the photograph, what's your vision? How does the final image looks in your mind? Then ask yourselves these questions. Do I need a model or just lay down the piece? Does a light box work, or do I want to do this outside? And what other special consideration does my piece needs? In terms of model versus object, how intricate is your piece? Does a simple shot work, or do you need detailed shots? A model may help people give a sense of look and feel. And given your piece context is important for your audience to understand your piece, especially if it's not a non-wearable piece. A model can also help people relate and connect to your piece, increasing the chances of making a sale, which, that's what we're here for. In terms of artificial versus natural light, there are some advantage of using the sun as a tool, but it doesn't come without consequences. Most notably, white balance and the shot temperature. Depending on your piece, it can be best to go for warmer tones. These are easily more achieved with natural light. If you want colder tones, those are more easily achieved with artificial light. If you don't have access to lighting equipment for whatever reason, don't sweat it. You can set up outside. Just be aware of how much time you have. Depending of where you live, if you live in the sunny city of El Paso, between 11 and 1 are the best times to shooting outdoors. If you're shooting several pieces, just be aware of the time that it takes to photograph them, because light will change pretty quickly. A little cloud is all it takes to change the color and the entire vibe of your photo shoot. So for consistency, try to keep your shot short. Just check the weather and prepare yourself. If you're taking pictures of small pieces of jewelry, simple background works best. Just position it so the main light source, which is the sun, is directly above or in front of your piece. And again, it depends on your piece and how it interacts with light. Be aware that taking pictures outside will produce harsh shadows. Since the only light source is the sun, But you can mitigate this by reflecting light with a screen or a piece of paper. Just take our friend here again. This guy was photographed with a mirrorless camera outside at around 11 a.m. Honestly, this is just a piece of paper. Camera settings is 1/400th in shutter speed, ISO 200, and an f-stop of 16. The above image, you see the entire setup, just a piece of paper, nothing else. And you can notice how harsh the shadow here on the tail is, and also on the back. So you start losing detail. This image below is the same setup, just taking immediately after. I just simply lift the piece of paper to curl around, and you can already notice the improvement on the back of our little friend, and the shadow is not as harsh. Now, if you take a little bit of time to reflect it the right way, with again more pieces of paper, you can get a really nice shot. Now compare it with picture from before. This is again a picture from a phone. Auto settings, again, piece of paper as background, taking by a window, you know, and you can tell, like, if I'm not putting a lot of effort in these, they're already looking pretty good. Then we'll start adding the editing or adding a little bit more of reflections and everything, and you will come out with a great image. Again, it's not about the equipment, it's how you use it. All right, so basic camera concepts, and I'm gonna take a sip of water because this is boring stuff. If you have a DSLR or a mirrorless camera, fancy camera, this is where having access to settings starts paying off, since you'll be able to mess with them on manual mode. Depending on how bright the scene is, you can control how much light gets into the camera with mainly 3 settings: ISO, shutter speed, and f-stop. ISO refers to the brightness sensitivity of your camera sensor. Lower to mid ISOs are best for sunlight. Otherwise, you will overexpose the image. Higher ISOs are useful for when the light sources are very dim or at night. However, higher ISOs are prone to grayness and noise. ISO ranges from 100 to 6400. Their cameras are super crazy high ISOs, but we're not going to be dealing with those. In terms of the shutter speed, this refers how fast the shutter opens and closes, kind of like just opening your eyes and closing them. For sunlight, faster speeds are best to avoid overexposure. Similar to ISO, longer exposures are better for dim environments, since it literally just lets more light come in. This is how photographers achieve those effects with striking lights. They leave the shutter speed, they leave the aperture open for a little while they move a light source, and they start drawing hearts, or they like love, or will you marry me, or whatever. That's how they achieve them. The shutter speed is presented in seconds, with faster speeds presented as a fraction of a second. Now, my favorite, the one that I still don't understand, is f-stop, which it refers to the size of the lens aperture and how the aperture blades control how much light the lens makes available to the sensor. The f-stop is presented as a fraction. So if you see in your camera f8, that means 1/8. If it's f22, that's 1/22. Again, since these are fractions, f8 is a larger aperture than f22. So what does all this mean? It means light control. The better you can control how much light is available for your sensor, the better your shot will come out. My recommendation is play with these settings, but don't go right away with manual mode. More often than not, cameras have different modes that lock or automate most of the functions of the camera, will let you play with ISO, shutter speed, and f-stop. So they're usually called S, P, and A. Like, you know, it really depends on the camera. And once you understand what these three things do, then you can venture onto manual mode. But again, just experiment. Again, I know all these terms are intimidating, and you can absolutely get lost on all these modes on a professional camera. So what it is to do, well, you just got to prepare for the shot. Honestly, both cameras and phones are smart enough to pick the best settings for your shot. So your job really is to make it easy for them to shoot a great image. That's where we're taking time to prepare everything in advance. So all you got to do is press the shutter once or twice. Part of that prep is taking care of your pieces. If your piece is dirty, if it has dust, visible fingerprints, all of this is going to show up once you start getting close and intimate during the photo shoot. So inspect your pieces beforehand. Big role is propping. How are the pieces going to be displayed? If it's a ring, is it going to stand up or laid out? Are you going to be using someone's hand? Dangling earrings look the best when they're suspended. Some necklaces look great if you lay them out. Some others you might need a bust or a model. So figure this in advance. Remember the tape, thumbtacks, and the fishing line. This is where you get to use this. Again, I like to have earrings dangle from a fishing line. Takes a bit for them to stop moving, but the shot is usually worth the trouble. So you can see, like, you know, this is unedited image. So I just have the fishing line and really, you know, the top part just gets cropped. During editing, it's super easy just to get rid of the fishing line. If you are taking pictures of several pieces, have a roll call. Make a list of your pieces and the images that you will be needing from them. Make sure to note if you're going to be propping them or how you're going to be displaying. During production, it is a lot easier to keep track of this list instead of just pressing the button and hope for the best, hoping that you have all the images. If you're shooting with a model, you have to be aware of the time available both for you and the model. What is it? Both pieces and the model need to be ready time of shooting. Again, if you're shooting in a specific location or several locations, make a plan, schedule time that you're going to be spending on each location. This might seem, obvious, but honestly, do your work. The more you prepare in advance, the less you have to worry about all these stuff during the photo shoot and subsequently during editing. All right, so you prepared everything, you did your list, you prepare yourself, your equipment, and your pieces. But before you click away, there's always a couple of things that you have to take in consideration. Batteries. Remember to charge your batteries and devices. All the work that you've done all the way through here is just all for naught if your battery dies mid-shot. If you're using a phone, do not charge and take pictures at the same time, especially outdoors. Having the display on, image processing, you holding the phone in direct sunlight, these actions heat your phone independently. Charging only accelerates heating. So doing all this at once will cause your phone to shut down. Don't ask me how I know this. So if possible, to get an extra battery, I know that we're trying to keep this low budget. But if you can get an extra battery, or sometimes it sells the DSLR wall adapters, those can help if you're in a studio setting. Otherwise, just try to keep your shooting time short. In terms of camera settings, if you did your job and play around with the settings in advance, that's great. If not, stick with what you know. There's no shame in using auto mode. Leave the camera, figure it out. Don't be messing with things that you don't know during the photo shoot. In terms of memory cards, same with the battery, check, double check, triple check. Is it in the camera? Has it been formatted? Does the camera recognize it? A spare always helps, and SD cards are super cheap right now. In the case of your phone, especially on iPhones, do you have enough storage? That's a funny thing with iPhones. If you're not careful, like, you go through the storage pretty quickly. If not, back up your family photos on the cloud, clear space, but make sure that you do this before the photo shoot, not while your model is in the sun and makeup is melting and she can't keep her eyes open. It's not good. RAW versus JPEG. This is a favorite of mine. RAW format is just that. It's an image that has not been processed by the camera. This is useful if you're planning on spending a good deal of time of editing color, white balance, and the whole myriad of settings in post-production. It offers a lot of flexibility in terms of editing, but this is a double-edged sword. Since it's unprocessed, it'll take a long time to edit the shot. So if you're practicing, or you're taking 1 or 2 pictures, that's fine, but it starts getting really hard once you start editing a series. You can mitigate this by creating templates of settings. But again, you would have to edit one first and then apply those settings to the rest, and that really depends on the program that you're using. JPEG, this is compressed, processed, and packaged format. In a camera, it means that the engineers have fine-tuned this camera to process color in a certain way. It also sometimes crops the image, or it does a little bit of perspective. You can put both side to side and you will see what I mean when they have tuned the image. When you take a picture with a camera and it says processing, this is what's happening. The camera is tuning the shot and saving it as a JPEG. JPEG is useful if you just want to, if you're just planning on make small changes on post, maybe some color correction. Again, cameras don't compress images too much when we're talking about JPEGs. But again, if you want the full, size of the image, RAW is the way to go. Most cameras offer RAW plus JPEG modes. Do not choose that. It literally saves the image twice, so it fills up your memory in half the time. Pick a lane. Either you edit the images on RAW or JPEG. And we will talk a little bit more of this on this. Some newer phones let you take photos on RAW. So again, you can fine tune the image to your liking if you really want to mess with all these settings. For the iPhone folks, especially the newer ones, the RAW images are called DNGs, but they are often saved as HEIC. I honestly don't know don't know how to pronounce it, or just hike. I don't know. Again, it's not RAW. It's their own JPEG codec. It's just a fancy name. It's just the same as a JPEG, but it's Apple quality. So it's half the file size. It's the same quality as a JPEG, but I like to think it's double the pain, since you can only open it on Macs, especially the new ones. So you might encounter problems when opening them outside of the Apple ecosystem. All right, how much time we got? Oh boy. All right. So here's the fun part. You get to start clicking away. Although I recommend that you don't go crazy. Remember, the more images you take, the harder will it be for you to find the right shot in post. Just make sure that your subject is in focus, that the image is not overexposed, but it's well lit. It's a lot harder to edit images if they're not properly lit. Check for white balance on your camera settings. If you're shooting outside, it's literally just a little sun. It says sunlight. If it's fluorescent light, it's a bulb. And I would recommend that you forget the idea of the perfect shot. You are looking for a great image to work with. And if you try to look for the perfect shot, you can spend days shooting a piece and you might never find it. If you're using a camera, don't rely on the quick preview. The little screen is not tuned for color, and it doesn't have enough resolution. Phones are better for this, but I do recommend checking on your computer on a photo shoot. If you have a laptop, that you can just use while you're shooting, I definitely recommend this. But once you understand your equipment, especially your camera and your phone, it will be easier for you to interpret the quick preview. But again, don't rely on that. We all know how this goes. You got all your preparations, and inevitably something goes wrong. It has happened so many times. There's really not much you can do about this. So just give yourself enough time. If you have a deadline, don't leave it to the last minute. Something will go wrong. You will forget something, or terrible things can happen. The only thing that you can do is prepare to minimize a catastrophe. But also, this is where you get to be creative. Find a solution by being flexible. Also, don't stress out. Don't forget to breathe. All right. You got your photos. Up to the next headache. If you did your homework, you can edit your photos and get them ready to upload in, again, less than 5 minutes. Sometimes it takes me more to clean up than to edit an image. In terms of file management, you should really figure this out as soon as possible. Images start piling up if you're not careful. Where are these images going to be stored? Is it on your computer? Is it the cloud, an external drive? Or again, do you want them to live in between your family and pet pictures? I do recommend that you separate them, but you do you, girl. If you're just using files and folders, that's fine. You don't need to name absolutely every shot, but at least name the folder. This will save you a lot of headaches. If you're using the Photos app on your Apple computer, you can always create a separate library by holding the Option key before opening the app. Or again, you can use a photo management program, which leads us to the big question: Lightroom versus Photoshop. Again, this is a loaded question. Lightroom is a specialized tool for photo adjustments and to manage your library. So developing raw images and keeping your files organized Nowadays, they have Lightroom Classic and Lightroom CC. What it means is that Classic is focused on computer-based editing. So, if you have a library on your computer and you already know how to use Lightroom, this is the way to go. Lightroom CC or Creative Cloud for the cool kids is geared towards an online library, and it controls more like what is it, a phone app. So it's more intuitive on phones and tablets. And again, the great thing is that it's online, so it just simply syncs with all your devices wherever you choose to edit. Compared to Photoshop, which is an image editor, and Photoshop just has a robust set of tools to edit every last detail of your image. It includes Camera Raw, which again, it lets you open and tune your images before importing them to Photoshop. The Photos app on the Mac is more similar to Lightroom. It includes tools to adjust your photos, just like your phone, but it also provides library management tools and more detailed settings like Lightroom. It has definitely become more competent since they have been incorporating tools from the now defunct Aperture, which was the competitor to Lightroom. Still hurts me, but what to do. I would recommend creating a separate library if you're going to be using the Photos app. Again, this is to avoid mixing your personal and photo library. Of course, if you don't want to give Adobe your money, especially since now they are subscription-based, there's plenty of free and web-based alternatives. So, I would just honestly just Google it and try a couple, and it really depends on how you deal with computers. Sometimes a simple app will work best, or sometimes you may want to look into GIMP. Then that's kind of like Photoshop, and it's a mess to use, but people love it. Again, if you are using your phone, you can always use iCloud or Google Photos to keep a clean library. But if you're going to do this, I would recommend using a separate email account. Again, just to avoid mixing work photos with personal photos. And if you're curious, this image is from the mess from a couple of slides ago. In terms of retouching and editing, I will personally go into great lengths to avoid editing an image. Hence the long preparation. The less retouching, the better for me. So if you did your homework, again, it won't take you long to edit a shot. When I'm shooting with a camera, I tend to import to the Photos app. Then I choose the images that I want to retouch. I do a quick settings on the Photos app, and then I go into Photoshop. I usually open Camera Raw, and then I retouch the photo again. Again, they have different settings. It's kind of like seasoning. I don't know. There's certain settings that I like better on either app. Once I've done, some little edits, I move into Photoshop to remove imperfections and background issues. And then I start working with adjustment layers, which I can actually demonstrate with this image that I have here, depending on how much time we have. Let's see, let me stop here for sharing, and let me jump into Photoshop. Please bear with me. All right. So this is the image that I had. Oh, what? Let's get rid of this real quick. All right. All right, so how would I edit this image? Again, this is taken with a camera, and you will notice that this particular image has focus on, what is it, the right side earring, but you can tell like on the left side, it's not in focus. I honestly do not even try to get them both in focus. What I do is just I take 2 pictures. This is the other picture where, you know, the left side is on focus, but the right side is not. So for this particular image, I would just get rid of this guy. And you can tell like it's just a crude painting. I literally pick colors from, you know, one of the shadows, which would be easier to mask on you know, what is it, further steps. Then I can go ahead and import this particular one here. So I would just do duplicate layer, you know, and I just paste it. And what I do actually is, what is it? I do it as a darken layer. So, you know, you can tell here. So that with the transparency, darken is usually the best one for, well, for this particular example, combined with our little layer in the background. So now it starts looking a little bit more natural. You can tell, what is it? There's some holes in the background, like these 2, where I actually stick, you know, another set of earrings. This one here too. So then they start disappearing. Then I start dealing with adjustment layers over here on our adjustment panel. Honestly, I do not try to do a lot of work. What is it? So I honestly just keep myself to curves, levels, and hue and saturation. So if you do the curves, you start bringing, what is it, the whites and the blacks out of the image. And then I just fine tune it with levels to make it pop a little bit. And again, you know, 5 minutes to actually edit the photo from the original to the final piece. If we're talking about something with a little bit of color, this is the actual image, and you can see the colors are a little bit muted. You can see the fishing line here, here and here. But since it's well illuminated and this is transparent fish line, I do try it, you know, it really helps to mask the fishing line. So I have this layer here where you can see I just literally just paint over the fishing lines. And again, it will be apparent, but here's where the adjustment layers really help mask all these imperfections. So, you know, I have this hue and saturation, and, you know, it's not really visible, but once you start bringing the curves, it makes the, what is it, the lines and then the painting disappear, and just use the levels to give it a little punch. And again, it's all about preparation. This is seriously the shot. You can tell a little bit on, what is it, this side, that the lighting was not great. That's why I had to add this particular layer. So that's it. So for another one, let's see. So I'm gonna use the Photos app. and this is where I tell you that you can create a separate app. So I'm actually holding the option button, and I'll display this. My photos library, all my secrets are here in this one, but I can create a new one. So I just created this demo library. And here we have our good old friend. Oh, wait, you guys are not seeing it. Oh boy. I'm gonna have to do that again, huh? Where are you, Sue? Sorry about that. There you go. No, not that one. Yeah, sure. You. So can you guys actually see what I'm doing? I'm a little bit lost. All right. Paulina says yes, and I trust Paulina. All right. So again, we choose this library, and we get to see our little friend here. So honestly, I'm just gonna go edit, and this guy really doesn't need a lot of editing. And again, you can see the piece of paper here. So honestly, this guy's ready to go. So what I'm gonna do, but anyways, these are the settings that I would, advise you to. Usually exposure, highlights, and shadows, and contrast are what I tend to use to edit an image. So actually, I'm going to open this on Photoshop. I think I need to stop sharing. And sorry about the chat. Where am I? Here we go. All right, I'm getting rid of this. All right, so now that we have it on Photoshop, and again, this guy really doesn't need a lot of editing, but let's just crop it 1:1. And just like that. Like literally, I just skip the paper. You might see a little bit of blue here. So what I would do is let's create a camera raw filter. And I would just make it a little bit, starts disappearing. Give a little bit of contrast. Vibrance. Well, that's too much. And honestly, this guy doesn't really need that much, So again, I don't tend to spend a lot of time on this. Anyways, I'm going to stop sharing now. So I guess anyone has any questions? I know that it's kind of hard for us to connect through the chat. Hi. I can see someone saying hi. So yeah, if you have any questions about the presentation, maybe Laura has someone. Which one do I answer, Laura? You're on mute.
I'm so sorry. All right, so the first question is, which camera would you recommend to a rookie photographer for shooting jewelry?
For shooting jewelry, honestly, I've had a lot of more experience with Sony cameras, especially the mirrorless. And again, this is my little camera. It's not even that big. If you already have, some lenses from previous cameras, perhaps a Canon or a Nikon. But I read a fantastic piece some years ago, because professional photographers tend to get this question a lot. And again, you can spend so much money trying to figure out what is the best camera if you're going with, the least, the cheaper one and the cheaper one, and then you start upgrading. But sometimes it's best to jump to a nice camera, splurge into, mid-range to high-end camera. It is expensive and it hurts the wallet a lot, but it's worth it because, quality cameras will last you a long time. And it'll be easier for you to learn how to use a good camera than, if you learn how to use a cheap camera, then you might need to upgrade because it's not doing what you want. So honestly, I recommend jump gun and buy a nice camera. If you can't, that's fine. Like there's cameras that go for like $300. But honestly, if you're gonna experiment at that point, I would actually spend a little bit more money, for sure. Next
All right,
question.
that's great. The next question is, do you have any specific staging ideas for highly reflective pieces like glass?
Oh, like glass, yes. So remember that I was telling you about the light box? The good thing about this, and especially if you do the light box with foam core, especially white, you can control the light with both the tissue paper and with how far or close the light is. So if try it with the with the lamps a little bit further away from the light box. If it's still too harsh, if you're still getting a lot of highlights, then put an extra layer of tissue paper and then adjust again. Sometimes, and I've done this a couple of times where I do the same thing with in the front. I also cover it with tissue paper. I make a hole for the lens and also start arranging light. Again, this is very specific to the piece, but reflecting light and diffusing light with tissue paper and pieces of white cloth might help. Getting rid of highlights.
Okay, that's great. So the next question is, someone who works in pencil, charcoal, and some colored pencils, are there any special tricks for photographing black and white art for prints?
Yes. You have to be very careful about the white balance. Depending on the paper that you're using, that is what will dictate where the levels live, especially in Photoshop. Once you take a photo, you can tell Photoshop to, pinpoint the black is black in your image and pinpoint the white is white. And then it figures out with the curves adjustment. But this starts getting tricky if you start using a little bit of an off-white paper. So you can still start with that and then adjust the curves layer, or you can do it black and white and then add a little bit of color with the hue and saturation layer. It might be a little bit like cheating, but you can try to best represent your work with different tools. Again, it's not about, like, if you're being deceitful with the colors, I mean, that's one thing, but if you're trying to recreate your piece to the best extent, I mean, whatever adjustment layers necessary, I think that's still fine.
All right, sounds good. Next question is, how do you know that you're done editing? Sometimes I think I did fine, and then I get the comment that it is too light or too cool. So what's the perfect setting?
Well, it's never done. Like at some point, you have to save yourself the headache, and also take in consideration who's going to see the photo. It might be a computer, it might be a phone. Are they going to look at it inside, outside? Like, you can't control all these things. So if you're comfortable with an image and you're starting to get a headache, I think that's the point for you to stop. It also helps for you to step away from the computer, walk it off, and then come back, a little bit refreshed. People have different opinions about how an image should look. However, the important thing is, what is your vision and how do you want people to read the image? Obviously, if you ask someone for opinion, they'll give it to you, and more often than not, it won't fit with your expectations of that image. So I would just follow your heart. If it's ready, it's ready.
All right. Next question is, what would be the best recommended method to photograph traditional fine art?
Traditional fine art, in what sense? Are we talking about a sculpture or a painting? Is it, are we talking more, I guess, archival purposes? And again, this is, I mean, I'm asking to the wind, I guess.
Yes. And
they
just said it's flat work, yes.
Flat work, yes. So this is where it starts getting tricky. The lens depends a lot. If you have a lens that is not completely flat, and I mean, this is kind of dumb since lenses are not flat, but there's kinds of lenses that will distort the image on the bottom, so you can still see the, a little bit of bubbling. So I would find a lens that, it doesn't do that. The easiest way is to, prop on a, on a wall, and have the camera at eye level. I would avoid, zooming in. I would just get the camera as close or as far as I need it to frame the picture. Then I would go on to Photoshop, add some rulers, and start working with perspective. Depending on how you're photographing, if this is already a frame piece, then it gets a little bit trickier. But it's easier if it's not framed in any way, because that way you can crop it. Once you mess with the perspective settings of Photoshop. Mm-hmm. Hopefully that answered the question.
I think it does. The last question is, if I'm shooting jewelry outdoors and really like the natural backgrounds and surroundings, how can I reflect light without putting the piece directly on paper?
Okay, so if it's worn by someone, which I would recommend, if you already have your setup, again, you can use the a foam core, just white to reflect. I would avoid using, what is it, lights. But depending on the situation, you know, that's what I would do. I would just get a bunch of what is it, foam cores, and they sell them pretty big, 32 by 40, and that really helps reflect the light. You can ask someone else to hold it, or a couple of people, while you mess with your shot a little bit, or, you know, frame your shot. But, you know, that's what I would do. They also sell like the photo screens, and these are reflective, what is it, material, and it's they're usually what is it, cloth, but, you know, they're chrome, or they have like a gold kind of sheen on them. Those are a lot better because they are meant to reflect the light. So it looks silly, but, you know, you're trying to get the light, and, you know, you have to move around, and it's honestly kind of like just reflecting a little bit of light onto someone's faces, but now you're just doing it on a piece. So it's very tricky. It really depends on the setting and where the sun is. So I would advise practicing and trying to figure it out. You know, don't despair.
All right, well, that was the last question. I want to thank everyone for joining us here today. We had a very good audience. Thank you for your questions. And to answer the last one of your questions, we will be posting, we're recording this session, so we'll also be posting it on social media as well as our website. So you're going to be able to go, yeah, you're going to be able to go back and look at everything and pause as needed. So again, thank you, everyone. I want to remind you about the next session by Paulina Rosas. She'll be talking about, whoa.
And even the dogs are excited. I'm excited.
She'll be talking about setting up a Square store and website, along with discussion on various other platforms. So make sure you register and make sure you join us next Thursday at 6. All right.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate it.